Hey guys, welcome back to my channel where today I'm going to be talking about palettes that I have recently decided to declutter or have already decluttered but are still actually within my possession. I don't usually do a full declutter video because I prefer to go through my collection, day to day and say, okay, I haven't used this palette in a while, maybe I should pass it along, instead of just holding on to everything and doing one big declutter. And then on my channel, I like to do more of a collection tour, like this is what I'm enjoying now. And it doesn't contain palettes that I just don't use anymore. So that's what this video is going to be about. If you're interested in that, then I hope you'll stick around. If you want to see this eye look, I did film it and I can link it down below for you as soon as it's live. And if you're new to my channel, hi, my name's Rachel. I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I love to play with colorful eyeshadow. My channel has all kinds of content like palette bingos, colorful eyeshadow looks, tutorials, rankings, collection tours, anything like that. If you're interested in colorful eyeshadow, this would be a good place for you to hang out, and I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing. So before we get into this, I do want to say that any eyeshadow palettes that I either decide or am unable to sell on Poshmark or Mercari, or I don't have a friend or family member in mind whom I'd like to give them to, everything that's left over I donate to an organization called Project Beauty Share. Even post-COVID, as far as the last time I got information, they do accept gently used or new cosmetic products as long as it's not expired. So it's probably about twice a year that I'm planning on actually sending a box to Project Beauty Share. Anything that I haven't been able to pass along in a responsible way, I will happily give to that organization. So if you're curious, that's where it's going to go. But let's just get right into this. I'm going to start with what is the oldest colorful palette in my collection. That is the Take Me Back to Brazil palette from BH Cosmetics. This is their original one, not the full shimmer version. And this is really the first time that I bought a single palette to meet all of my colorful desires, wants, and needs. My qualm with this is that it's just not very good quality. The pan sizes are tiny, which doesn't really bother me because with this many shades, you're probably never going to use all of them. You might hit pan on a couple of them. I know Danielle Claire, she was one of the first YouTubers that I discovered. I'll see if I can link her down below for you. She has done some incredibly beautiful, dynamic and interesting eyeshadow looks using this palette, because kind of the whole point is that she's like a starving college student and she has no money for really nice makeup, so she knocks it out of the park with this palette. She was my inspiration. She's the reason I bought this palette, but I didn't have the skill level that she had, and at this point I have so many nicer quality shadows in my collection, I really don't need to keep this. This palette has a lot of near duplicate shades. These yellows, very similar to one another, these greens, and then these right here, these two blues are quite similar. All three of these dark blues basically look the same. This one's a little more purple, but still. These three purples, this one, yeah, is a little more warm toned, a little cool toned, definitely plummier, but they're all quite similar. Over here, these three pinks look pretty much the same. These pinks right here, very similar. The red and the orange, basically they're both orange. There's no true red in this palette. If these were better quality, then having those slight nuances might be fine because you could really add some depth and dimension to even a monochromatic look, or choose exactly the right tone that you want to blend out your color. But it's just not very good quality, so it's not as versatile as it could be given all of the options. I think I kept this around for, a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit of I just hadn't gotten rid of it yet, but it's time to pass it on. Another palette from BH Cosmetics is the Do Not Disturb palette. I went back and forth on this one. I really love the color story. The reason I've decided to get rid of it is because I don't love the shimmer formula. Now the mattes are amazing. This matte right here is gorgeous. This is a beautiful color. But the shimmers are not the BH shimmer formula that I know, like from the travel series or from the brunch series. Those shimmers seem to be a totally different formula from what these are. These are more like topper shades. They're very thin. They're not super pigmented or opaque. They're just kind of weak. They're just weak. And so, yes, I love the color story, but I have a large enough collection at this point I can get something like this from other palettes. I'm very comfortable now mixing palettes, not just grabbing one palette for an entire look. So I love this color story. I love that it's not super deep. I tend to stay away from the dark blues and purples, and this, with the exception of this guy, totally meets that, but he can be used to deepen out the other mattes, so it's fine. But the shimmers were so disappointing to me, and it's just not worth keeping a palette when literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 9 shades are shimmers that I don't like. If these were good shimmers, I would keep this forever. But they're just not. They don't excite me, they don't do very much, and they're just really disappointing. So I like the color story, don't like the formula, I'm gonna pass it along. Alright, I want to talk about the Exotic Peacock palette from Pinky Rose Cosmetics. This one, I won't say I regret this purchase. I do like the palette. The few looks that I've done with it have been very, very pretty, especially when I use this color here. Risque is incredible. Like, it's so pigmented. It worked amazingly. It blended out like a dream. Really fabulous shadow. Then I deepened it with this and I put on these two shimmers here. Very, very pretty look. Another time I used like the pinks and browns, and it's the looks that I've gotten from this I have liked a lot. The reason I've decided to declutter it is because a third of the palette is the dark blues and purples, which at this point I've discovered are not the best for me. And so I don't really use them that much. Like, I'll use a dark blue or purple in the very outer corner, but I'm not going to use it on the whole lid space. And honestly, if I really want good dark blues and purples, I'll grab my Age of Opulence palette from Beauty Bay, because that one has those super deep dark tones. And this palette is just not remarkable enough to warrant keeping it. These shimmers are not amazing. They're okay. They're fine. They're just not amazing. And I have some really amazing shimmers in my collection that I would much prefer to use. So I've decided to declutter this one. I already have it listed on Mercari, I think, just because, you know, there's no reason to hold on to it. I would prefer to just give it to someone else who will get a lot of use and enjoyment out of it. Now let's go back to BH Cosmetics. It's funny because I didn't realize how much BH Cosmetics was in this video, but yeah, a good amount. Let's talk about the BH Cosmetics Birthstone palettes. I probably shouldn't have bought the Birthstone palettes. I have learned since purchasing them that I don't really like small palettes. For me, 9 to 15 pans is a perfect palette size. Anything smaller than that, I forget about, or it gets lost, or I'm not able to do a complete look using that palette, and I have to grab a whole bunch of other things, which is fine. It's just, if I'm grabbing a bunch of other palettes, I usually forget about the small ones. And anything larger than that, for example, the ColourPop Mega Palettes, it's just kind of overwhelming. There are too many choices, too many options, and you go, you know, you freeze a little bit. So I like a 9 to 15 pan palette around that size. And so the BH Cosmetics Birthstone palettes are cute, but they're too small for my tastes. They are great BH Cosmetics quality. I just find that I don't reach for them. This is the Opal for October palette. I did a look with this palette and I was totally unimpressed until I used these two shades. These two shades were amazing. So for each of these palettes that I've decided to declutter, I'm going to do one final look using them for the month to which they correspond. So I'll do an October look using this palette and then I'll pass it along. I might pre-film and pass them along early. I don't know, whatever. But that look is going to absolutely be about these two shades. These two are incredible. But I have a couple other palettes, so I have a really good light blue, and this mint green is fabulous, but it's not so remarkable that I forget every other palette and go grab this one. It's just not there, you know? I don't know. And then honestly, this is to me a better highlight shade than a lid shade. It's a beautiful pinky white iridescent, but I think it's a great highlight shade. I don't know, I'm a little bit torn. Like, they're small. I paid $4 for most of them because I got them with Black Friday sales, but I'm not using them, and I don't really want to hold on to things that I'm not using. The same goes for the Turquoise Palette. I like the colors. I knew that I would. I've used it, I've enjoyed it, but I have these colors elsewhere, and I just don't remember that these palettes exist. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to declutter these. The Peridot Palette, after I bought it, I realized that it actually looks a lot like the Lush Life palette from ColourPop. Now, let's compare. There are several shades in here that I'm not going to say are dupes, but are very, very close. I actually plan on doing a video where I take these two palettes head to head and do one on one eye and one on the other and see how they compare, because I don't think you need both. I didn't realize that until after I had already bought Peridot, but I'm looking at it going, it's no wonder I like that color story, because that's the Lush Life color story, and I love Lush Life. So, didn't need to buy Peridot. It's a good palette. This one's actually my favorites from the 5 that I have. I really like all these shades, but I have all these shades here, plus a few extras, plus this is amazing quality. And so, not to diss this one in any way, this is also really good quality. It's just, I don't use it because I reach for Lush Life. So those are the palettes that I have decided to declutter. I might like one or two of the shades a lot, but if I don't use the majority of the palette, there is no reason for me to keep it. I have some beautiful eyeshadow palettes where I love every shadow, and those are the ones that I want to have in my collection because they're the ones that bring me joy. I have a small pile of maybes here. I'm just going to get through those and then we'll be done this video. The first maybe is the Garnet palette from the Birthstone series, and The reason that this is a maybe is because of the red shadows, the red shimmer and the red matte. They're both really good. I don't have hardly any reds in my collection. The only red that I can think of is within the Wilderness palette. There are 2 reds in there, and there is a red shimmer. So this red I think is a little bit cooler toned, but the Wilderness palette is a great palette and it has tons of other options. And so I think I'm probably going to pass this one along for that same reason. I have these colors represented elsewhere. Someone else can have this palette and use it, and it can just be someone else's favorite instead of collecting dust in my cabinet. There are 2 palettes in my maybe pile, which are from Udenzai, and I'm a little bit sad to say that, but it goes back to not liking the smaller palettes. I bought the Mini Forest and the Mini Sky palettes from Udenzai. These are both really pretty. I'm going to open them together so you can see. They're beautiful palettes. They have some beautiful colors. I love the Udenzai formula. I tend to forget about these palettes because I don't really reach for the small ones. They just don't offer enough to remind me that they exist. However, these are beautiful palettes. They're beautifully done. Considering that they only have 6 shades, they actually have a rather surprising variety of options, and I like them a lot. I just forget about them. So with these, I'm really torn because I like them, I like the brand, I like the performance, I like the formula, I like everything about them, but I forget about them. So I don't know. I haven't decided whether or not to declutter these. I think I'm probably going to keep them. Every time I do a look with one of these palettes, I think it's really beautiful. I just need to remind myself, hey, use that palette. So I can understand why people go on palette rotations because they often forget. Like if you have a bigger collection, you just forget what you've got. I don't want to get to that point where I forget what I have. But with the little palettes, it is certainly a tendency for me because they're small and they fall behind things or they get shoved to the back of the stack or whatever. They kind of get overlooked, and I think I want to keep these because I like everything about them except the size. So I probably just need to bring them up to the forefront a little bit more so that I can remember them. And then the final palette to talk about in today's video is the Love Notes palette from Beauty Bay. This is a palette I regret buying. I shouldn't have purchased it. I kind of got caught up in the hype and I thought it was pretty, which is true. It is a very pretty palette. It's quite pretty. I just think it's a bit redundant. It could have been pared down to a much smaller palette. I think that, you know, within the pastels, we have a lot of near duplicates. Like, why are they there? They're too close to each other. However, this is a beautiful palette, all in all. It has interesting and unique shimmers. Like, none of the shimmers are super close to each other. The mattes are redundant, but the shimmers are not. So that's exciting. And it's also a beautiful companion palette for the Age of Opulence from Beauty Bay, which is super deep dark tones. And then you can pair it with these much lighter tones and get more dimensional looks. It's also one that I found myself reaching into several times lately to get one of these light lavender colors, because whether I do a periwinkle look or a smoky eye but I want a light inner corner, or doing some sort of two-tone look with lavender or light purple, these are my light purples. I don't really have light purple represented anywhere else, not like this. So I'm on the fence with this one. It doesn't get a lot of use, but when I want a couple of the colors that are represented in here really well, like a nice light purple matte, I've got 3 or 4 options, and I definitely have reached into this more than I expected to in order to find one of those colors. It's in the maybe pile. I don't know if it'll survive another couple months, but you know, we'll see. Anyway, that's my video for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you liked the video. I hope you consider liking and subscribing if you want to see lots more content like this. And until I see you again in my next video, I hope you have a lovely day too. Bye. I'm going to do one final look using them for the month in which they correspond. I'm going to do one final look using them for the month. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, where today I'm going to be talking about, wait, what am I going to talk about?